It's a fine line I'm walking here. All the time, really. Hi, I'm Bargain Counter Argument here on YouTube, also available on Instagram, also known as Sock Marionette. And you may be looking at me and saying, Sock, are you really wearing an electrified tiara of ivy leaves? And I will say to you, yes. Yes, I am. And there's a reason for that. That's because today's video was inspired by my buddy Megan, Megan's Book Nook 519, also available on Instagram. And she gave me this in a Discord gift exchange, and I am very grateful. And generally speaking, when people give me tiaras, I will tell them that they can assign a book to me. Like, you give me a tiara and then you say, I want you to read The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare or whatever. And I will not wear the tiara on the channel until I do a video about that book. Now, this is not actually a tiara, in case you hadn't guessed. It's ivy garland that I'm going to be using in some various staging and shelf decoration type things. However, today's video, being inspired by Megan, and the garland was what she gave me in the Discord gift exchange, I thought I would wear it. And it's probably going to be its only appearance on the channel. And don't worry, these are LED. I'm not burning my hair. I'm not burning myself. It's all perfectly safe. I'm just not going to run naked through the rain wearing nothing but this. I wasn't going to do that anyway. So what you may ask is the topic of this video that was inspired by my buddy Megan. Well, the other day, a couple of weeks ago, it must be, yeah, about 2 weeks ago now, it feels like it was just yesterday, I talked about Choosing Theo by Victoria Aveline, and I compared it rather harshly. I really like Choosing Theo. I compared it rather harshly with Johanna Lindsey's Ly-San-Ter series. That's the one where this is the final book of the trilogy, and yeah, there's Fabio, there's a lady who's not Fabio, there's Fabio's giant sword, which she seems to appreciate on a number of levels. Let's just say she appreciates it deeply. And I actually DNF'd the entire series about 25% of the way into the first book, because just like the attitude toward consent and SA was not where my head was at. Now, it was pointed out to me in the comments by Violet that it's entirely possible that a lot of people are reading these books satirically. I don't know if that's the spirit in which they were intended. The first book was published, I think, in the early 90s. This was published in 1999. She kind of doled them out over several years. And as somebody who was 20, 21 during that, early 20s during the early 90s, I have to say that was a very strange time to be in the dating pool. It was a strange time to be reading fiction, particularly romance. It was a strange time to be in the dating pool. And it was just generally a strange time in terms of male-female relationships. I can say it was a strange time to be a woman. It's always a strange time to be a woman, and it's usually a strange time to be a man as well. However, I think that everybody was very confused about gender roles at that time, particularly older people, and Johanna Lindsey, okay, boomer. So maybe it's satirical, maybe people enjoy it as satirical, but I'm not sure that that was the spirit in which it was intended, and it was not the spirit in which I took it. So, also in the comments of that video, Megan was saying something about how she's interested in reading historical romance from the 80s and 90s, but she's always a little cautious because of the reputation that those books have for having a very cavalier attitude toward consent, and the idea kind of being sometimes that SA is acceptable as long as you enjoy it. It's icky. It's super duper icky. It's super icky. Can be, not always. So I thought with that in mind, I would start a sort of sporadic series. Again, this is the only time I'll be wearing the electrified tiara. I haven't decided what to call it yet. I'm kind of considering consent maybe, or I don't know, because I'd like to assess these books not just based on the attitude toward consent and male-female relationships in that regard, but also like things like imperialism and colonialism and racism and general misogyny, as opposed to specifically in sexual relationships. So considering consent is one possibility. The other day I was talking to somebody on Discord and I mentioned that something from the 80s could be on the Yikes-O-Meter, or maybe it's pronounced Yikes-O-Meter, depending on where you live and how old you are. So I thought I would maybe like be a canary in the coal mine, another potential series title, and kind of read some of these older books and kind of get back to you about where they fall on those kinds of sensitive topics. And I realize it's kind of, I'm discussing these sensitive issues while wearing an electrified tiara. I'm trying to remind myself to have a little levity, but hopefully not too much. It's a fine line I'm walking here. All the time, really. Yeah. Anyway, so I thought I would start with two similarly titled books by, yes, Johanna Lindsey. One is Prisoner of My Desire. The other is Captive of My Desires. Anyway, they were published about, I think, 10 years apart. Let me take a quick look at the... this was actually published in 1991. So more like 15 years apart, because as I recall, this was published in 2006. Yeah, this was published in 2006. And they take place in different time periods of the author's life as well as historically. So this book, Prisoner of My Desire, has a step back. And somebody, I got this at a used bookstore in Milford, Connecticut, and somebody had helpfully put a little post-it in there that says standalone. So you know you're not getting into a series. Now, this is what the summary says. And I went into it having read the summary, and I made a deal that I was reading this, so I thought I knew what I was getting into. However, listen. Captive of love, spirited Rowena Belém must produce an heir or incur the dangerous wrath of a ruthless stepbrother who stands to forfeit his ill-gotten wealth. And the magnificent Warwick de Cheville is the perfect choice to sire her child, though it means imprisoning the handsome knight and forcing him to bend to her amorous whims. Slave of passion. Vowing to resist, but betrayed by his own virility, noble Warwick is intoxicated by Rowena's sapphire eyes and voluptuous beauty, yet all the while he plans a fitting revenge, eagerly awaiting the time when his sensuous captor becomes his helpless captive, and is made to suffer the same rapturous torment and exquisite ecstasy that he himself has endured. Johanna Lindsey. America loves Lindsey, as her phenomenal string of 23 blockbuster bestsellers has proven. Experience the soul-stirring magic of breathtaking and unforgettable romance from the incomparable Johanna Lindsey. Okay, here's the thing. They're suggesting that Rowena has a lot more agency than she actually does. This is a trauma bonding. It's not even trauma bonding, because she barely knows what's happening. She just knows she's supposed to do something with this guy in order to get pregnant. And she's doing so under duress. And he doesn't realize that. And of course, once he does get free, he captures her for revenge and so on. However, it makes it sound like the whole thing was more voluntary on both their parts than it really was. And I'm not going to say that this is the best exploration of consent and what the body says versus what the body wants, versus what the mind wants, what the mind says. However, it is a lot more nuanced than the back cover would suggest. This is a messed up relationship, and both of them know it, although she is very naive in some ways, but they know that this is not great. So I don't know that people would necessarily enjoy reading it, but it does have some interesting things to say. I don't agree with a lot of the things it has to say, but I did read it all the way to the end, and I was kind of fascinated by what was happening. And I'd also like to point out that this is taking place in the middle of the 12th century, 1152. So there is that. And compared to Ly-San-Ter, this is so much more nuanced and interesting. Again, it's probably not for everyone, but it's not as bad as you might think. But proceed with caution. Now, I'm comparing it to, again, this was 1991. This is 2006. So a lot of things have changed. Johanna Lindsey's changed. The world has changed. And this one is taking place in the 19th century. And although it is captive of my desires, and we have a bit of a hubba kind of bondagey type. Can I say bondagey on YouTube, or will I get demonetized? I'm not currently monetized. You have to have more than 17 subscribers in order for that to happen. Anyway, yeah, so, however, this is more of a romp. Now, let me read the summary for you and let you know where I think it stands on the Yikes-O-Meter, or Yikes-O-Meter. The Mallorys return. Yeah, this is part of the Mallorys series by Johanna Lindsey, but it functions as a standalone. It's not going to get a post-it, but you can read it without reading the others. Gabrielle Brooks sets sail from England to a Caribbean island in search of her estranged father and encounters a life-altering surprise. Her father is a pirate! After spending 3 wonderful years hunting treasure with him, Gabrielle is dismayed when he decides she must return to London to find a proper husband. His old friend James Mallory will sponsor her in polite society. Gabrielle is escorted to balls and parties by James's wife, Georgina, and her brother, Drew Anderson, a dashing American sea captain and fun-loving rogue. Drew Anderson is Georgina's brother, not Gabrielle's. Gabrielle is English. When Drew embroils Gabrielle in a scandal the night before he's to sail home, the pirate's daughter vows revenge by commandeering Drew's ship and taking him prisoner. But as passion runs high on their sea voyage, it becomes difficult to tell who is truly the captor and who is the captive. Now, this is very much a pirate romp. I mean, this was written in the wake of the success of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I believe they had already come out by then. Am I very much mistaken about that? I'll have to look that up. I will put a little text on the screen so you know that I looked that up. This was actually one of my 12 recommendations. It was a bonus recommendation for my 12 recommendations video. It was 12. The video was 12 plus 2. This was one of the plus 2. And it's romp. It's a romp. It's fun. And captive of my desires. Yeah, there's this like captive thing going on. She has legitimate beef with him. He is kind of clueless. And this is period typical misogyny. Not that he's misogynistic. He just does not realize, as an American also, he does not realize just how misogynistic English society is at that time. So what he thinks was just no big deal, she sees as ruining her reputation. So I would say that you can safely read this book, and I'm pretty sure you're not going to get tripped up too much by consent issues. They're not, yeah, I mean, her dad's a pirate, they're on the high seas, it's the 19th century, so colonialism and imperialism are just kind of baked into it. I think that they have a reasonably good attitude as individuals, but they are working within a corrupt system. So, and there's only so much individuals can do to address endemic, systemic issues. So I think this should be safe to read. Your mileage may vary. So I'm going to give this one, I'm not going to put this, in terms of like actually trying to assign a Yikes-O-Meter or Yikes-O-Meter value to either of these. I don't know that I can, really, because I would say this one is probably about a 3.5, 4 out of 10, just because, I mean, we're talking about a time when imperialism and racism were rampant, and misogyny as well. This one I would put more like a 7.5, 7.5 on the Yikes-O-Meter, because it is really unhinged. It genuinely is kind of unhinged. However, I think it is more of a serious treatment than, like, say, Ly-San-Ter, where it was just kind of, essay is so much fun, and ha ha ha. Satirical or not, wasn't for me. So I Thank you for your attention, and if you enjoyed the video, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, or not. I'm not the boss of you, and have a good day or night.